Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'm going
We're doing something great over here.
Dave, will you go?
Did it get quiet?
Yes, I can.
We ready to go?
Sounds like it.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, welcome. Nice crowd. Thanks everybody for coming. We're going to start up. We got a couple things we're going to talk about today. Two main things, convention updates, both local and state. And then we're going to talk about the mineral wells election. We have two of the candidates here tonight to let y'all know who they are if you haven't met them. And then Bob Silver is here somewhere. Bob Silver is our resident Palo Pinto County geoscientist. And he's going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk something, not elections, we're going to talk about global warming and kind of what he can bring to the table in terms of what that's like. And so that'll round us out for the evening. So we'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer. So if y'all will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we'll do the Texas pledge. Will the teachers in here join us in leading this thing?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, Jan.
Honor
the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas. One state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Someday I'll remember. Okay, Dave, will you lead us in an opening prayer?
Always say, any veterans in the house tonight? Raise your hand. Let's give a round of applause. Appreciate the sacrifice of this country and freedom. I've been there with you guys, so it's not fun getting shot at, is it? So let's pray. Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you for each and every one here tonight. We pray that we'd have discernment. You give us wisdom. I pray for decorum. I pray for peace. And thank you for each and every soul here and their families that represent them. Thank you for this time. I pray for Mr. Silver, and give us a good word tonight, and give us truth about something that's really grasps the world and our government. And I pray for the candidates tonight. You give them wisdom and discernment, and they're answering their questions. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. All right. great to see everybody. And we got a pretty good crowd tonight. Thank God for coming. Yes,
A
Tracy?
lot of new people here.
A lot of new people? Anybody, first timers here?
Yep. Yeah.
Great, thank y'all for coming. We're gonna try to keep the introductory stuff short, so we save time for the guest speakers and for Bob and for our two candidates who are here. So we'll get on to that. Briefly, for those of you who don't know, we had the Pinto County Convention, Republican Party Convention, a couple weeks ago. And from a conservative standpoint, on the bottom line up front, I saw this quote that says, "History is written by those that show up." And we had a huge turnout from this group in the various precincts that we are inhabitants of and have precinct chairs of, that won the precinct chairs. So we had a great turnout. I want to thank everybody from this group that showed up. It made a significant difference. And we got several things to go our way that wouldn't have gone our way, honestly. There were two things about the rule. I mean, some of this stuff is really boring when you talk about parliamentary procedure and convention voting and stuff. But we had two votes that would have really substantially changed the outcome. But we had enough people there to vote down some things that were trying to limit our participation. The state team that is going to the Republican convention, we got a really good outcome on that, and we had a very overwhelming vote on that. And then the one thing that was probably the most surprising to me is the Rules Committee, the Resolutions Committee. The Resolutions Committee went a long time over. They worked their hearts out, talking about, I think there were 30 or 40 resolutions they thrashed through, and the outbreak on them took quite a while, and we were way over time. We should have ended at noon, and it went to like 3. But one of them that went by that was rejected by our Palo Pinto Resolutions Committee was the resolution that said there shouldn't be Democrat chairs in the House, in the Texas Republican House of Representatives. And if y'all follow this stuff, you know that our House Speaker, Dave Phelan, that's one of his techniques for gaining power is to give committee chairmanships to Democrats. And that's been the source of a lot of angst. And most Republicans, conservatives certainly are opposed to that. And so they had rejected that as something that Palo Pinto County wanted to say. And so I protested that or moved to change that one to approve that resolution. And we had to do some work, real-time wordsmanship in the thing, and everybody's ready to get out of here. But we got that changed. To me, that was maybe one of the most significant things we did, is to say that Palo Pinto County does not want Democrat chairs in the House of Representatives, the State House of Representatives. So again, thank you all who participated in that exercise. Okay, so now there's going to be 16 of us that are going to the San Antonio Convention. It's, May the 23rd through the 25th. It's actually longer than that. There's some earlier committee stuff if you're part of all that. That you can go to earlier, but there's 16 of us that are going, and 16 alternates also, and the alternates have some non-quote conservatives in them that were some of the people in the party here locally for a while, so they'll be there for that also. So so what is that about? The first thing is there's going to be a new state chair elected at the state convention. The current guy, Matt Rinaldi, is stepping down. No big drama. He's just ready to be done with it and wants to pass the baton. There's, I want to say, 10 people running for that, something like that. It's a big crowd, and it's still a very it's a fight, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that want the Republican Party in Texas. We think most of us think Texas is conservative. What's the question? But there's a whole lot of Republicans that are not. And there will be a big fight down in San Antonio over who replaces Matt Rinaldi. And then the other thing is these rules. For those of you who have been with us for the last several months, almost a year, we started off last year with a platform of 8 big initiatives that the Republican Party of Texas wanted the party to implement into law, into state law. And that got substantially inhibited by this whole Democrat chair thing. So the party, the newly elected, what is it, there's like 25 newly elected conservatives who have put together this thing called the Contract with Texas, which is kind of a takeoff on the old Republican Contract with America. And it's really an excellent document. It's 12 initiatives. Actually, I think I have them there. It's these 12 initiatives. And I'm not going to read them all to you. If you want, you can read them. But there's a couple of great ones in there. One is no Democrat chairs. I love that. One is, this is a brilliant idea. Make sure the GOP priorities get voted on before you start working on Democrat bills. You know, I mean, how brilliant is that? And the other one I think I really like down here is start substantive work as soon as the session begins. I mean, if any of you have followed this stuff, I mean, they were a month into the session before they ever did anything. So I think those are great. To the extent that you get a chance to support them, please do. I expect will support them heavily at the convention. And if those things get voted, this is a contract, sort of a legislative contract. So this is how the legislature is going to do their job. This is not really legislation to put in place regarding education or kids or any of that kind of stuff. That will be on top of this. But this I think will be tremendous in terms of getting the Texas House working like we all just would assume it works. That's about it. That's all I wanted to tell you about the two conventions. I think the next thing we're going to talk about is our local election that's coming up right here. Joey, you want to talk about that?
Okay, so we have two candidates that are here tonight that are running for the Council of Mineral Wells. Bryan Sleeman was going to be here, but his uncle passed away this week. And when he was at the funeral, his granddaughter gave him a doozy of a cold and a fever. So he called me this morning, and trust me, he didn't sound like he should be here, and I don't want a cold and a fever. So he will be at the Mineral Wells meeting, which is going to be Saturday. It's a forum, an open forum, and it's at 6 o'clock at the Red Lion. And so he'll be there to answer questions and be heard. So if you wouldn't mind, Ron Davis and D.B. Thomas, would you come on up? Sure. I'm really excited about these two. D.B. Thomas is running for Ward 3, and Ron Davis is running for mayor.
You want to sit by your patient? I can't believe you blew that up that big. That's not flattering at all.
Well, I have to say, D.B., you're not photogenic. I've tried many good...
You're not the first person
No,
to
you are
notice.
not photogenic. So I'm just really excited that these two decided to step up and run. There's been a lot of worry going on in the city, and it's not a real high-paying job to run for city council. And I'm just very thankful for them. And their platform, one of their main things is to shed transparency and light on the city of Mineral Wells, and I believe they will do that. So I will sit down here and start asking some questions. Yeah, he gets all the hard stuff. Okay. So let's start with DB on this one. Tell us about your ties to Mineral Wells, family, job skills, and what will make you a great addition to the city council if elected.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
No. There you go.
I moved here 17 years ago. My wife and I have a 7-year-old child, and I care about the community, and I think it's a duty if you live in the community and you're asked to help, you kind of have to say, okay. I think that every once in a while all of us get a chance to pitch in, and I look at this as my chance to do that. I'm an MBA. I work for a company that handles infrastructure projects around the United States. We monitor them from the time they pick out where they're going to put whatever it is and get their land rounded up and get their leases done or their fee purchases bought. And we shepherd the thing through until they get it financed. And then after they get it financed, we monitor the construction against their draws so if they've gotten a loan for, you know, 400 or 500 million, whatever it is, there'll be little milestones in there that they have to reach. And when they reach one, they can get their first jag of money, and when they reach the second one and prove it to us, they can get their second one. So we hold them all the way through until their loans are completed, and then many times they come back because it'll be time to do a refurbishment or the thing will change hands, and so we never completely get rid of a file because they come back alive on me, but it's my job to keep them back in the box and put them where they go. What else can I tell you? Is that pretty much?
Hobbies? Any hobbies?
I used to, a long time ago, before you know, the kid and the job and all the other things happened, but anymore it's, you know, catching my kid and making him take a bath.
That's not a hobby.
It's kind of fun, but you know.
And how old is Bryan?
He's 7.
7, okay.
And quite a Lego builder, right?
He's got the Lego fever. He wants to be a brickmaster. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a brickmaster, but there is, and it costs a lot of money to become a brickmaster. We take Legos have gone up since we bought them. Anyway.
Okay. Ron, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yep.
Okay. So tell us about your ties to mineral wells, family, job skills, and what would make you a great addition to the City Council of Mineral Wells?
Well, it's kind of a sad story compared to DB. I'm retired, been retired for 15 years. My wife and I, Judy, moved here in 2008. But we have ties to mineral wells in that Judy's parents moved here in '75 when he retired. And we've been coming here since then to visit Judy's parents and her extended family. We're from here to Abilene. And skills, well, I lost most of my skills when I retired, I guess. The only thing I would add that maybe is worth note is I'm not taking this job to supplement my retirement program. I do have management skills, worked for a major corporation for 25 years, hired people, promoted, did budgets, training, and that. And I left there after 25 and then started my own companies and did that for 15, and then had an opportunity in 2008 to sell that business and retire, move to Texas.
And why do you think you would be a good addition to the Mineral Wells City Council?
Well, I'm very task-oriented. I like, when I see a problem, I like to formulate a solution, a game plan, go after it, come up with some solutions to bring that to a good resolution, a positive resolution.
Great. DB, I don't know if I asked you, I don't think we finished that part. Why do you think you'd make a good candidate for the city councilman?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I'd be the best, but it seems like I'm the best you have. So what kind of thing that's the thing. We're relatively well-educated people, and we've handled business before, so it wouldn't be the first time either one of us saw a set of mechanical drawings. We've handled money before. We know how business works. So we're not off the turnip truck.
Okay, second question. Ron, you're going to start with this one. What are the first things that you want to get started to get the city started on a better path?
We've got to look into our water infrastructure. Apparently the Brazos River pumping station is pitifully under-equipped to maintain the water quality for this city. It should have 3 pumps. Currently there's one running, there's one out on parts, and there's one on standby. The TECQ says that they call that situation critical failure. If one pump goes down, that's why you'd have 2, and the third is a redundant. One, when run on one, that one goes down, and we could be out of water. So we got to start right there. We got to look at our water infrastructure underneath our streets, correct that problem, the delivery system, and then look at our streets, Everything else, you know, it's a long list. Where do we start here? We've got a lot of problems ahead of us, and we're gonna get after them and deal with them.
Okay, and DB, what are the first things you would like to get working on when you are elected as the city councilman? Get the city onto a better path.
Well, I'm coming at it from originally from a more emotional point of view. We, especially in this ward, I live not far from here, and in this part of town, and in the whole town, but in this part of town especially, we've got a mix of people that you don't find just every place. We've got some of the finest homes in this town, and that may be next to some of the more bleak homes in this town, right next door. We've got some people who don't have to worry about their bills, and they may be a block away from some people that cannot pay their bills. We've got people that are in their 80s and 90s living next to young families. And that, we take that for granted, but that's not a situation that happens just everywhere. We live elbow to elbow with all kinds of different people. And that means that our friends and neighbors are going to be from a wide range, you know, if you know the people around you. And when the bills went up as suddenly as they did, I know that it was a burden, a real burden on a bunch of my neighbors. Many of us don't have to live on a particular budget, and that's great, but a whole bunch of us do. And it doesn't matter if you're a little widow lady that's living in a 4-room house and you budgeted for a $50 water bill and it comes in at $100, you got a problem. If it's a larger family, or if you got, you know, a little family living in a small house and you budgeted for $150, $200 and it comes in at $350 or $400, you got a problem. And this is monthly, right? We're right now, according to who you listen to, we're in the most severe economic downturn in about the last 40 years. So these things don't exist in a vacuum, right? I mean, this is the same time that the groceries went up and the gasoline went up and everything else that they're doing. And that's not the fault of the city. I'm not saying that's the city's fault that the groceries got expensive at Metro, but it's a fact. And it's causing real pain to some of the people in our community, and that's the first thing. We've got to get some relief from that. Now, what we do over the long haul, we can, you know, we're not stupid people, and we can find a way to move forward without just grinding up some of the people that are having a problem. And I think there are quite a few of them, evidently. I don't know if that answers your question.
Could I add on to that, I've walked all 4 wards in the city, and I've talked to a lot of people in the last 6 months. And to say, I mean, I'm not sure just how to describe it. Some of them are devastated. Weeping tears at the door when we show up, explain what we're doing, and they say, oh my gosh, someone's out there working for us, and they're thrilled. But the impact is throughout the city. It's not just the elderly, the people on fixed incomes, or young families. It's throughout the entire city.
Okay, back to DB, you're first again. Why is it important, in your opinion, to get new blood on the city council?
Well, this is another one that I'm going to answer a different question. It doesn't matter whether I think it's important to get blood on the city council or not.
Yeah.
It matters whether the people in the town think it's important. All right? When this all first started happening back in December, we were obviously, you know, the same bill that came in December that blew our hair off also had a notice in it that said pregnant women and small children shouldn't drink the water because there might be things in it that would cause neurological damage. So you're going to get a bill that's more than your electric bill for the water, and it says in there that it's poison. I mean, you couldn't make this up on a TV show. So this was in the backs of our minds, but then as we're driving through town, we saw people picketing at one point with signs outside downtown at the stoplights, and then I saw that there was a recall that was happening. So there was obviously, people were becoming so unhappy that they were beginning to really take action. So that's it's not whether or not I think something needs to happen. It's not whether or not I got a high bill. It's not whether or not I liked it. Evidently, a lot of people got a high bill and none of them liked it. And that's the situation. So I think it's, I think it's a question that everybody should ask themselves. Do you think we'd be better off if we took another look at this, or do we just want to plow on forward and grind up the way we're grinding? And I don't know the answer to that question. I feel like we should slow down and take another look at it. But it'll be up to the people to decide what they want to do. And that'll be fine. People always pick the right way if you give them the information and let them vote.
Okay, thank you. And Ron, why is it important to get new blood in on the city council from your perspective?
Well, I think you've got to get fresh eyes on old problems. I was in the military, and one thing that in the military they do, they rotate you around over a year, 2 or 3 years. You're going to a new job, a new base, whatever. And it's refreshing. It kind of fires you up. It gives you a new insight into your job, your task at hand. When you're in that position too long, I think you stagnate. You run out of good ideas, fresh ideas. So by having new eyes or fresh bodies in there, we can come up with some better plans.
So recently the governor came to town, and Abbott has never been to Mineral Wells, according to him, when he said it was a nice, beautiful town. And he was a little disappointed that the city council, the current city council, did not show up to say hi or anything. And we all know that, that we need money to probably help this water problem. What is your perspective on that? And if you were a city council member, I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts on that would be. Go ahead.
Well, again, I can't speak. Maybe they all had diarrhea on the same day. There could be a reason to not go meet the governor. I would kind of feel like that we needed to do that. And if it had been me, I would have been there. Might have even worn my top hat. But yeah, it seems like a missed opportunity for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the way I look at it, it was an embarrassment to the city for a governor of Texas, to show up in your city and the leadership of this city not show up, or the water board, 2 organizations that are going to have to go to Abbott to get these funds to make the repairs that we're looking at and we need so desperately. So that was a travesty in my opinion.
Would have been a nice chance to make friends.
Real good chance.
Yeah. Okay. Would you mind putting up this slide? We recently heard that the attorney that represents the water board of Mineral Wells said, if the people cut out Starbucks, cigarettes, and tattoos, then they can afford the water bills. And it's going into the minutes of the meeting, and it's pretty legit. So, and there were many that heard him say that. What are your thoughts on that? Ron, you haven't answered first for a while, so.
Over
A microphone.
the span of my life, I've heard politicians make statements that haunt them for the rest of their life. We think about some different presidents, but I think those things haunt you. But what came to my mind was the French Queen Marie Antoinette is best remembered for her cruel comment when informed that the peasants were starving. Her response was, "Let them eat cake." Not much difference from Mineral Wells citizens who can't pay the outrageous water bills being told to stop buying Starbucks, getting tattoos, or cigarettes. If you remember, Marie lost her head.
Listen, was it a smart thing to say? Obviously not. But if you want to hear somebody say something stupid, just listen to me for a few. I'll say something stupid before the night's over. People say stupid things, and if it's in the wrong situation and it gets all, it was quite an unfortunate thing to say. But what it does show, for sure, is that they either don't understand or don't take seriously the situation that a lot of our people are in. And maybe they wouldn't run into these people. You know, I've got a neighbor that's missing a leg and he's in a wheelchair and he's not out at the disco meeting everybody, you know, at the restaurant. Maybe they don't know who lives in their town. But it's really hurting some genuine people that we know that live within blocks of us. So, you know, at the very least, they don't know what's happening to their own people, for sure.
Yeah.
A total disconnect with the community, I believe.
That's a better way to do it.
I think we have time for a couple of questions. And from the audience, does anybody in the audience want to ask a question to the candidates?
I do.
Okay, Lloyd,
According to the paper.
hold on one second.
I'm loud. I don't think I need mine. I'm loud as I can be.
You can share.
I can't help being loud.
According to this week's paper, there was an article in there by the police association saying that nobody running for office against the council showed up for their meeting. So therefore, the police association was backing the whole city council the way it is now. And I was wondering why nobody showed up for that meeting.
Well, I can answer that. It's going on right now. And we have our scheduled meeting every third Monday of every month. That we had our speaker and everything set and the place rented. So that's why we let them know that we already had that scheduled, so.
Okay.
So-
I need to say about the Police Officers Association, send questions to everybody, not a meeting. They send questions.
Lloyd, did you say meeting or questions?
No,
At a meeting.
it was at a meeting
Meeting.
for the police association.
Oh, meeting for the
And
police.
they said nobody showed up on the other side. They had meetings. They voted for it. The back of the city council.
I never heard of the meeting. I did contact Juan Saucedo of the Mineral Wells Police Officers Association, and I got his list of questions from him. But before I could get them back to him, they'd already endorsed all of the incumbents.
Okay. Are you gonna put a rebuttal in the paper saying why nobody showed up?
I'm not, no.
Well, you could.
Could. I haven't. I could.
I'm in favor of the police, in case anybody's wondering. I like them.
Okay, anybody else? Tim?
Come up there, or?
No, hold on.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm pretty loud, so.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you're good.
So when you make a decision on, do you think you can handle all the infrastructure, all the street replacement, infrastructure replacement? Do you think you can handle all that out of the general fund? Are you looking to raise taxes at all, or put out bonds for that?
Well, I think a short answer is, we've got to see what we're facing.
Yeah.
Have you looked at the current budget, the 2023-2024 budget, and
Yes.
see where there's mishandling of funds or anything like that currently?
I'm not an accountant, I can't tell you what's going on in the budget.
So,
We have a lot of problems, we're gonna address them all, and how the funding is done. We will be going to state and federal agencies, we're gonna talk to Abbott, whatever it takes. We will show up when Abbott comes to town, because we wanna keep a good rapport with him. But we're gonna look at all these things and find ways to get it done.
what is your threshold on how it affects the citizens of Mineral Wells? What is your threshold on if you have to raise taxes to get streets done? What is your threshold on the amount of money or how many it affects until you won't do anything?
I don't know how you answer that until you look at the books.
For me, and again, this is just my point of view, and it may be off base, I feel like that's the cart before the horse. When you figure out what you'd like to have, and then you divide it up and stick everybody with the bill, that's what we've been doing That's what happened this last time, and it doesn't work out so well. Our people can afford to do a certain amount and no more. And that's who we have. That's who we are.
What's
so
that threshold? Though?
we will-
If 2 or 5 or 10 people came and said, I can't afford what you're saying to raise it, would you at that point say, no, sorry, we're not going to raise anything because we've got a handful of people who can't afford that?
I don't think so. That's very theoretical.
I'm asking what the threshold is. Is it 1%?
Here's what I can tell you.
3%?
Here's what I can tell you, and this is one of those things like, you know, when you smell gas in your house. How much gas has to leak out in your house before your house explodes? Well, I'm not sure. If I smell it, I know there's something the matter, and then when fire and the windows all break out, I know that we've crossed the threshold. If you make people mad enough to take to the street and recall the council and raise all the ridiculous that has been done, which I was surprised by, I'm going to say that there have been some thresholds crossed there. I'm not trying to be flippant about this. I'm saying that you can only drive a horse as fast as it can go. And if you start going any harder than that, you're going to have bigger problems than you ever had before. And we've got to remain conscious of that. We can't pick out what we would like to have and then divide the bill up and send it out to these people because they can't pay it.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing. So 571 signatures were collected in a recall. 571 signatures, and that was in Ward, let's do Ward 1, I know that one perfectly. 471 signatures in Ward 1, and it took, to get this man to step down and recall, and 137 votes voted him in. Now in Doyle Light, it was, which was Ward 4, there was 460 signatures that we collected to say, hey, and we only had to get 25%, once we hit it, we hit it. And then, but it was 47 people voted him in. And so voter apathy is a big deal in this town. People just don't feel like, there's a lot of people say, man, God bless you, but there's no chance. We've always been oppressed, it's always been corrupted, it's just, that's how it is. And I'm like, no, you guys, you can't think like that. There's always hope. So, and then it started building momentum. And so just so you know, it's not 5 people, it's not 10, it's 571 people that have done this. So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I know it's silly, but it's like, how hard can you push a group of cattle before they'll stampede and run through the fence? Well, you'll know right after you go past that, because that's what they'll do. And, we have to remain mindful that we're here to serve these people.
Yes.
And to do what we can for them with the resources that we've got. They're not here like a lemon for us to squeeze till we get it tasting the way we want to in our lemonade. And sometimes you forget that, and I understand. We get overwhelmed with the task, and there are a lot of demands, and the numbers are flying around, and there are consultants that have been paid a lot of money telling you that if you don't do this, you've lost your mind, and you feel a lot of pressure to force an egg out of a chicken that hadn't got it in there. So this is what got us here, and I'm not happy about it. I think it's terrible. But we've got to take a step back and have a little bit more respect for what we're working with, and then do what we can with it, I think.
Yes.
Do y'all think that the city council hears from the citizens in advance of these kind of decisions?
That's an open-ended question, Steve. I mean, look, I'm not naive. I understand that if you open something up, whoever's the craziest in town may come in and raise the devil for 7 hours straight. I mean, you're not maybe getting from hearing from the people that don't leave their houses, or from the ones that are older, or from the ones that might not speak English, or you might not hear from everybody until there's an election or there's some kind of a drive, and then you see across the board what everybody's thinking. I don't think you can adjust. You can't do a course correction for every person that screams at you, because people, a certain percentage of people do a lot of screaming, and I know several of them, and I might even be one. So you have to be level-headed about it, but we have statistics. We know what there's a percentage of this city that is technically needy, right? So how fast you want to drive that horse? We have to. When I go to trade cars First thing I say is, how much are you gonna pay? And I say, oh, about 20,000. And they don't show me the Lamborghinis, because I don't have the money. Now, if I didn't tell them I'm broke, well, they show me the nice ones and they say, let us get you into a payment plan and show you how this is all gonna work. No, I look at what I can pay for, and I don't think that's a bad way to go. I'm not against progress. I mean, if we can get it done, if we can swing it, I think we ought to. But not if we all have to swing, to make it happen.
Yeah. I have a question. So you're running on lowering the water rates. What are your plans to get that done? How are you going to accomplish that?
To lower the water rates?
Yes.
Let's put it up to a vote. Wait a minute, that's what it should have been the
You're
first
running
time.
to do that, so tell me what your plans are. I mean, have you studied where we've come from and where we need to go? And so everything I see around town is get your water rates lowered, so you must have a plan.
We do.
Okay,
As
tell me that.
DB said, I forget the numbers, in the last 6 months, we spoke to over 3,000 people in the city. And we've got a pretty good pulse of the water situation in the city is not sustainable. So let's go back and start over. Let's roll these back. Let's see what do they have to be set at to maintain a water supply. And then look at infrastructure repairs. And let's go forward. No, I don't have a plan on a piece of paper I can hand to you right now. But I'm going to we're all going to look at every possibility and how to get it done.
You think our current council hasn't done that for the last, I've been here for 30 years, and we've had this problem for 30 years. And a lot of people have looked at it, there's a lot of plans in place, a
That's
lot of
right.
experts, so I'm just wondering what your magic is.
I've been here 15 years, and in the last 6 months of talking to people that's been here their whole life, they say the same thing. Every time we go into a drought situation, oh, Turkey Peak, money's gathered, big plans are made, and then the rains come, the Lake Palo fills up, and it all goes away. Well, let's look at the alternatives to Turkey Peak. Let's look at all the alternatives.
Or the alternatives to funding the plan they've got. I mean, there's no, the rub isn't coming in with whether or not anybody made good plans. The rub is coming in with how they're financing it. And there are a lot of places where funding can come from, but you can't get blood out of a turnip. And we have a certain number of people that we can't get any more blood out of. And so unless we're willing to just grind them up, which I feel like would be a horrible thing to do, and I think our town would suffer for that, we're going to have to back off and give them a little bit of breathing space, especially until maybe we get some guidance from the Public Utilities Commission, because I'm told that that's coming down the pipe too. So if there's a possibility that they're going to say we've got to refund a bunch of money anyway, why not let the people keep it now while we're waiting and find out which way this ball's going to bounce? And meanwhile, okay, no matter what, we could win the lottery, the governor could come back and say, I got thinking about it, and I'm just going to give you the money to do this reservoir. Here's $400 million. If something like that happened, it would still be a period of time before it's built and filled and ready to go. And in the meanwhile, right, there are things that we have no choice but to do. If you had a reservoir tomorrow, Hilltop's not up to speed, and everybody, we don't want to fix that because it's old. If you got a new one approved today, Hilltop would have to run for up to 10 years while they're building the new one and decommissioning the old one. So you're going to have to get another 10 years worth of squeeze out of that anyway. So we need to get that up to speed. The distribution system around the town, if it's leaking, we can't repave a road for going back out there with the backhoe to dig it up because the water main's breaking underneath it. So these are things that you have to have pipes that go to the houses, no matter if the Santa Claus brings you a reservoir. So these are things that we can, maybe, I hope, even if we have to do it incrementally, we can crawl our way toward this. If we've only got this much money per year, let's fix this much of it a year. And if we keep doing that, we'll have these done, we can think about paving these roads, and we can work our way across, because it's going to have to be done anyway. And it's something that we might be able to get our arms around. And that's not ruling out, funding from other places or another way to handle this. I hope I'm speaking for you. We're not against progress. We just don't, we would like for everybody to get there with us.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Why will you do a better job than the incumbent you're trying to replace?
Either one. Both of you.
Well, it might not. And here's how you'll know. If people take to the street and start signing their names that they want me gone, and they go around town banging on doors and putting up signs, you will know that I have made a big mistake. I hope I don't, but that's the first sign.
Ron.
Again, that's hard to beat. Well, I'm going to listen to the people. You know, I'm old enough to remember when people in councils or in governments and that, they were called public servants. Let's see, wonder where that came from. The public elected these people to serve, to do our bidding, not theirs. So if we have a city council where it's people can have free speech, we can have a set amount of time, 10 people want to speak, we give them 3 minutes each, they got 30 minutes or whatever, you know, an hour. We want to hear input from those people, from the citizens that are footing the bill for this. So that's my criteria. If I'm listening, if I've got an ear to the pulse of the community, then I can respond accordingly.
Well, I have to say, I was flippant before. It's not a surprise. I have no reason to believe, and I don't think it would be in our interest to believe that anybody involved in this has done anything but work their tail off with the very best of intentions. I don't think that people do this. I mean, they're certainly not doing it for the money, right? I think that there's goodwill involved, and I think there's been a lot of hard work done. But I also can admit that at this juncture, it looks like we've got a big problem that's not working out. So that doesn't mean that everything that's been done before goes out the window or down the toilet, but we do need to pull back and get some relief for these people while we work out another way to get hold of this. And it's no different than if you're helping your friends and you're moving a piano, and one of them on the backside says, "You got to give me some help, it's falling on me." Well, it doesn't mean he's not your friend anymore. It means he lost his grip on the piano. And we're going to have to set it down and maybe get some more help and get another hold of it and figure out another way to move this before it hurts somebody. Yeah. And it's no hard feelings on my part. And that also goes, by the way, since you can't get away and I have a microphone. We can't have a town without all these sorts of people, and that doesn't just include the people that are having a hard time. That includes the people for whom things are going very well. We can't have a bank unless we have people that have some money to put in it. We can't have businesses unless we've got people that are willing to risk their time and energy and a fortune to put in a business so we'll have a place to do our trading. We can't have a nice town without people that are doing well and that are willing to fix up big nice houses. We need this, and these are our friends. So let's not turn this into, we're not the barbarians at the gate, in spite of what you may have heard. Our town is too small to have factions like this. We all live within blocks of each other, for God's sakes, and we all want to have water that isn't poison, and none of us want to put these little old ladies in the nut house because they can't pay their bills. What do we not agree on? So I hope it stays civil, is all I'm saying.
Okay. You guys made it. Yeah, run. Okay, so now we're here for our, my handy assistant back there is saying that she would like us, if anyone would like to donate to our group, that we don't get wolves or done money or big, whatever. And so if you wouldn't mind donating in the back, we have our guest speaker who is Bob Silver, and he is going to talk to us about global warming and the kind of the hopes kind of stuff. I don't know. He's going to talk way over my head, but he's here, and I've heard him speak before, and he's amazing. So welcome, Bob Silver.
All right, can you hear me with this? Yeah. Can you hear me without it? Without?
With.
Okay.
Is this really the first chart?
Yeah, just lift that up a little bit.
I'm worried about
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to break this into two parts. The first part is going to be a little bit of the science that you just kind of need to understand, at least what's going on. You don't need to understand all the details of it. That talks about whether or not CO2 is the driver of global warming. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we'll go back to some science. And then the second part is how did this all get started? And kind of a little bit of the history, because that really is helpful in understanding why this is going on and what's happening with all the money that is being raised. So those are the two things we're going to start. But I also have a little science experiment that we're going to do. So I'm going to set that up real quick. It's basically a can of Diet Dr. Pepper. Okay? And I have 2 cups. And I'm going to pour a couple of ounces into each cup. And I'm going to let one sit on the counter. And one I'm going to put back in this little cooler where there's some bottles of ice. Okay, now we're going to show some slides a little bit later that's going to answer why did we bother doing that, and it'll be very instructive. But I'm going to have to ask for a volunteer at the end to come up and sip from each of those cups and see if they can tell us the difference between the two. Okay, so to begin with, I want to tell you a little bit of my story. As you saw on the preliminary thing, I graduated the University of Utah. I have degrees in geology and degrees in geophysics. And so when this global warming stuff started going on, I had a little bit of distrust in it because they never really talked about, put things in proper context. They always would say things like, well, in the last 150 years or the last 30 years, and if you knew enough about the climate, you could say, well, yeah, you cherry picked that particular date because that was the coldest or the warmest or whatever, you know, date to use, so that made their graph look nice. And so I had a little bit of distrust. But then in 2020, I decided, okay, I'm a geophysicist. I almost went into meteorology. I had, I kind of waffled a little bit at the beginning on choosing which one. And I need to know exactly what it is about CO2 that drives the climate. What are the properties? What are the physical properties of CO2 that make it so important as the climate driver? So I started looking up on Google and got frustrated really fast because everything was censored. I mean, there was very little that you could find out. It was basically aimed at 5th grade. And so I don't need a 5th grade education on this. I'm a scientist. I want the actual data. I want to know, I want to look at what are the real physical properties. So I started using some other search engines, DuckDuckGo and some other ones, to find out some additional articles. It opened up a little bit wider of a thing, and so it's just been kind of an interest for quite some time. And I have since found, a half a dozen posts or people that I go, this guy's a really smart guy and knows what he's talking about. And I can give you some of those names at the end if you want. So basically my distrust turned into disgust. And I found out that there's just a lot of lying going on. And it's even worse than that. There's lying going on, there's manipulation of data, and it's really deplorable, and it's really sad. So now, I don't want to, my wife also made me promise that we're going to talk about geologic time, and I don't want to offend anybody with that, but that's just how the data is presented, and it's not by any means meant to hurt anybody or whatever. So this first slide, did you have a pointer? The button on the top, the middle one. Oh, I just did the whole thing, the middle one. There we go. Okay, there's just there's only one real key point to this. Obviously, this is going back 600 million years ago to the beginning of when life existed on Earth, et cetera, et cetera. But the key point is this blue line is the average global temperature, and this black line is CO2. And basically, the point you can get is there's no correlation. There's no correlation. So, you know, and if you can't really tell on the screen, but there's, when you look at it in print, you can actually see there's degrees of uncertainty. And people ask, well, how do you know? Well, there's actually some pretty good ways. You look at fossil evidence, and you also look at the 018 and 016, which are temperature dependent, and you can get that information from rocks and various methods. So that's, now what's the advanced button?
The one on the left. I mean, right, sorry, right button.
Okay. There you go. All right, this is basically the same curve. It has a little bit more detail, so it's a little busy. What I wanted to point out is that this yellow bar right here represents the limit of when you have ice at the poles. And so you can see that through much of Earth's history, there's been no ice. No North Pole, no South Pole with ice. I mean, the Earth's been a lot warmer than it is right now most of its time. Now, you can see this scale is kind of, this is way expanded and this is really way shrunk, just so we can put it all on a piece of paper. What's important is there's basically 5 time periods on Earth when we've had ice ages. It's not very common. Ice ages are relatively rare in Earth's history, and we're in one right now. We're in the ice age, we're not in a freezing time right now, but it's still considered an ice age. So there have been 2 in the Precambrian, one in the Ordovician, one in the Carboniferous. And geologically, just to kind of give you a heads up, these are really important. There's an awful lot of oil and natural gas that's discovered in West Texas because of this ice age right there. Because what happened during that ice age is sea level went up, and it went down, and it went up, and it went down over and over and over again. And each time it went up and each time it went down, it deposited certain rocks, and that's why the Permian Basin is the 2nd largest oil field in the world after Gomorrah. I mean, it's huge, and gives most of the oil for the United States, and it's very valuable. But the same thing was going on in Oklahoma and elsewhere. But that time period right there, and that ice age, is critical for supplying oil for the world. So but it also is very instructive because we can see what happened then, and we can compare it to what's going on right now. So it's valuable to know that. Okay, now this is a slide showing the Antarctic ice cores. They drill down, they keep them frozen, and they take them out, and they measure the 018, and they can use that as a proxy for the temperature, and they can also get out the CO2 content. And what's really interesting, this is just 400,000 years right here that we're looking at right here. And the temperature is blue, and the CO2 is red. And if you look really close and we're able to expand it, you would find that, oh wait, guess what? It's the temperature that changes first, and then the CO2 changes. And I'm going to give you a little heads up. That's why we're doing this experiment right here, okay? With the soda on the counter. Here's a fact for you. 70% of CO2 on Earth is locked up in the ocean. It's in the ocean. 1% is in the atmosphere. The other, 28% is tied up into rocks and oil and whatever. So almost, a very significant amount of CO2 is dissolved in the ocean. And guess what happens? I'm kind of cheating here, I'm going to let you know. When the ocean heats up, what escapes? CO2. It's one of the things that goes in the atmosphere. And we've seen it, I could show lots and lots of slides that show the very same thing, this very same point. Even in recent history, you've had temperatures go up and you've had temperatures go down. We had a cold period in the 70s. When I graduated from college in the 70s, we all thought we were going to go into an ice age. that was the news at the time. You know, that was, oh, we're all going to freeze to death and a new ice age is coming. So we've had cold periods and we've had warm periods, and guess what? CO2's just continued to increase. It hasn't really mattered. It's just kind of gone up. So there's a lag. You'll see that right here it says 700, 800 years at the lag for the CO2 to come into the atmosphere from heating up. Okay, next. Oh, back up just a little bit. See this little 10,000 years right here? And then here's, 24,000 years. We're going to see those on the next two slides. So here's that 10,000 years expanded right here. You can see that, for the last 10,000 years, it's been pretty warm, and we had this little ice age, and now we're coming out of it right here. Well, guess what the global warming people, or the IPCC, is all going to do? They're going to look at this part of the graph. Whoops. I hit the button. All you see is that right there. So it's really kind of unfair to just show that part of the graph. That's kind of statistically lying. Okay, so now here's the last. This is 10,000 years, I think. So this is going to show you temperature kind of in human history time. So you had, sorry, I hit the, there we go. So here's ancient Egypt. It's kind of a warm period. Here's classical Roman going on right here, the Maya peak, medieval warm period. Guess what happens when it's really, really cold? We're horrible. This is, Vikings. Yeah, it's hard. Life's hard when it's really cold. Life is actually better when it's a little bit warmer. And you can grow plants further north. Real estate in Canada is worth something. So there's actually some benefit to having a little bit warmer than super cold. Now I know there's lots. I'm a skier. I like to ski, and I like glaciers too. So everybody likes the way it is. But really, realistically, a little bit warmer is not a bad thing. Okay, here's the sea level rise. Now, people, this is the 24,000 years ago. The last of the ice age. Whoops, I keep doing that. The last of the ice age, sea level is pretty low because all the water is locked up in the continental ice. So you had ice all the way down to Missouri. All of North America, a good chunk of North America is covered in ice. Well, that starts to melt, and sea level dries up, and so about here 8,000 years ago or so, sea level just pretty much flattens out and it stays the same. So all this fear-mongering that you hear about, we're all going to drown, all these cities that are going to be underwater because, sea level's going to raise so much, it's just not going to happen. I mean, sorry, but they're lying to you. And it's certainly not going to happen in 5 years, like they say. So, here's sea level. You might have sea level go up inches, but it's not going up in feet. This is in meters, not feet. This is meters. So this is like 400 feet of sea level change, but it's already occurred. And so we're not really under threat of drowning anytime soon. Okay, next. This is the longest thermometer-driven climate thing that we have, Central England. So it goes back to 1659, and this is sorry, I keep doing this. This is the temperature trend. There's been a slight warming trend over that time, and that's been pretty consistent. Look at what's CO2 though. This is interesting because CO2 emissions. This isn't total CO2. Don't get fooled by that. This is just the emissions. Emissions are only like 4% of the whole CO2 total. So emissions have gone up a great deal, but that's what they're saying is, oh, we're all going to die because these emissions are going straight up. No, this is not really correlating. It doesn't work. Okay, so this is from NASA, and I thought it was really interesting that they left something off on purpose. It wasn't by accident. So you could see, I probably should have asked this question beforehand. If I'd asked you what percent of the atmosphere is CO2, what would you have said? Any willing person?
1 to 2%, isn't it?
No, it's way less than that.
101.
Yeah, it's 400 parts per million. Okay, so almost 80% of the atmosphere is nitrogen. You know, that's most of it. Oxygen is 21%. Argon is almost a full percent. We don't really think about that. So what you have left is 4%, just over 4/10. Yeah, 400ths of a percent is all of these right over here, which CO2 is most of that, but CO2 is not very much. And I think it's the next slide. I'm going to show you this, or a couple slides coming up. There's a reason why this is really important, and so we'll see. Okay, here's just some water vapor. When you talk about global, when you talk about greenhouse gases, water vapor is the most important. Now, if I go back and look at that slide, guess what's not on there? Water vapor. They left it off. Why? I'm not sure why. Partly because water vapor can vary depending on where on the earth you are. If you're in the Sahara Desert, water vapor might be 0.5%. If you're in Louisiana, it might be 5%, you know, or 4%. I mean, it's quite a bit. But they didn't put it on there. And I thought, that's really chicken. It really was. So water vapor is 95% of all greenhouse gases. CO2 is 4% of greenhouse gases, or a little bit just under that. Now the reason that's important is because, well, water vapor actually is really valuable, as you can tell. It acts as a blanket. If you didn't have water vapor and an atmosphere, then you'd be like the moon. You know, the moon has what's the temperature change on that? Almost a 400, the moon's hottest temperature in the sun is 250 degrees. Pretty hot. When it's nighttime, if you're on the backside of the moon, the temperature is negative 208 degrees. So an atmosphere, you know, God gave us an atmosphere for a purpose. It's valuable and we need it. And that atmosphere is what keeps us from boiling and keeps us from freezing. And so water vapor is the single most important component of the atmosphere. And that's what acts as a blanket. It's what, you know, when you're out in the sunshine, you feel the sun's rays, and it's hot, and the sun goes behind a cloud, and all of a sudden it's cooler. Or we had the solar eclipse when the sun went behind the moon, it was a little cooler. Well, actually, water vapor wasn't what we're talking about here. But then at the same time, at night, the same thing happens in reverse. Heat is escaping, radiating off of the earth, and some of it is trapped somewhat, so to speak, by the water vapor and the greenhouse gases, and it keeps us from escaping. So it's valuable. Now let's see, we'll go on here. Now, this is I know it's busy and it's a technical slide, but this is important to kind of understand this. And that is what we're looking at here. The blue represents heat escaping with no greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, so heat escapes quite a bit. And then what you have happen is you have the black line represents heat escaping with the greenhouse gases. What's important here is that the black line represents CO2, the red line represents CO2 at 800 parts per million. Black line is at 400 parts per million. The green line is, I think is, if I get this right, is when it was the very first, like 50 parts per million. So what I'm trying to get at is everybody thinks that when you increase something, it's going to be a linear thing, but this is a non-linear reaction. What that means is it isn't a single straight line slope. It's a curved line. So when you have low concentrations of CO2, it makes a big difference. And the more that concentration gets higher, the less important it becomes. And if you think about it, if it's reacting with gamma rays reflecting off, you get it to a saturation point where it's no longer going to be continuing to make a difference.
Sun is the same as water.
Hmm?
Sun is the same as water.
Yeah,
Got it.
right. Okay, so this is a pretty technical picture, but basically what you can see from here is water vapor is these little, these areas right here, and carbon dioxide are these right here. Now what's important is there's only a couple of spots where CO2 acts as a blanket when water vapor doesn't. So water vapor is still the single most important thing. CO2 does act as a blanket, it does reflect some wavelengths that are different from water, so there is some heat value from the CO2 as well. Now this is the key point. So if you don't learn anything, learn this slide right here, because this is really, really important. Okay, this is 140 million years represented right here. This is the end of the Cretaceous. And since that time, CO2 concentration in the atmosphere has gone from 4,000 parts per million, gotten as low as 180 right here. Now, the reason that's important, guess what happens at 150?
No plans.
There's no plants. The Earth dies. Everybody dies.
Plants gotta have CO2.
Yeah, plants have to have CO2. We need plants to live and survive. So at 120, you have an absolutely dead Earth. You know, you won't recover. I mean, you know, once everything dies out and there's nothing to generate, you know, it's just dead. 150, you'll have, around the equator, you'll have maybe a little bit of struggling plant life, but it's not going to be very pleasant. So from right now, we're at 420 parts per million. If you were to have CO2 and take half of it out of the atmosphere with carbon sequestration, you would be down to 210. 210 is, you're gonna lose all the trees here in Mineral Wells, because you're gonna expand the Great American Desert. Chad and a bunch of areas in Africa are gonna starve to death and die. They're not gonna be able to grow anything around that desert. We can actually see in satellite data just increase from 1980 to now in CO2 from 380 to 410 has resulted in the greening of a lot of the earth around the deserts. So CO2 is plant food. Now, if you double CO2 from the 420 it is right now, or 410, whatever, to 800, if you remember that one graph where it says we're almost saturated, it's almost no change in temperature, and plants love it. You'll have more trees here. You'll have more trees in Abilene and Sweetwater. You know, it'll be.
Not if you can't water them, you ain't.
What did you say?
I said if you can't water them, you don't.
Well, it is actually food. So you will get more plants even though you don't have that much water. The green expands into the desert a little bit. So what we're doing right now politically is essentially suicide.
Yes.
So you are putting all this money into carbon sequestration, put it underground to take it out of the atmosphere for what value? Absolutely no value.
Wow.
It's worse than insane. It's literally, so this is the really hard part when you sit back and you ask yourself, well, why are they doing it then? I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah, you have to.
Well, maybe at the end. All right, it's stupid.
Please tell us.
It's stupid. Okay. All right. So here's kind of a summary of that. Here's the logarithmic diminution of heating effect from the atmosphere. So once you increase whoops, I'm sorry, back more. We're like kind of right in here right now, increasing CO2 to 800, a little tiny bit of warmth, but you've improved plant productivity, and it's probably a trade-off that's worth making. Okay. So, I don't know what else to say on that. It's like, when you hear a politician or somebody promoting carbon sequestration, you have to say, why? What's your backstory? Are you stupid? Are you evil?
Yep.
That's
That's the only two,
I'm just,
that's the only two possibilities there are. That's it.
all right, so here's a quote from Richard Linson, MIT geophysicist and former head of the National Academy of Sciences. That CO2 was considered for a time to be a deadly poison will be remembered as the greatest mass delusion in the history of the world.
Wow.
I don't know what else to say. All right, so how did we get to this point? Okay. We'll cover these pictures as I talk about this. James Hansen is known as the grandfather of global warming. James Hansen is the chief geoscientist at NASA. In the 80s, if you remember, I think you guys are old enough to remember this, NASA was under threat of becoming defunded.
Yep.
You know, all the money, we weren't doing space exploration anymore, we weren't doing Challenger anymore. They were going to be defunded. So James Hansen wrote a paper on global warming and claiming that this was a big thing. So in other words, NASA was saying, we need a new dog to follow. We need a new pony here. Since we're not doing all this space stuff, we need to be in charge of something else. And what they decided they were in charge of was the climate. And so they're going to get all this money in order to keep funded it. They need the climate. Okay, so then what do? Is they get to control the government's distribution of research funds. So the research funds that go out to the universities are only going to be going to those people that write papers that are in favor of their narrative. And if it's not in favor of that narrative, you don't get the money. So over the period of the next, say, 15 to 20 years, guess what? All the universities become hotbeds of global warming, because that's their money. That's how they get. That's the money train for that.
Follow the science.
Follow the science. No, follow the money. So then you have this tribe of global warming that everybody follows it, and if you don't. So Google, 2 years ago, it was just ridiculous. They actually put out a big thing on global warming and told the way it was, and I read through it and it was just like, I can't believe this. There's so many lies in this. It's just really hard to believe and hard to understand how they can get away with it. So, all right, so it gets worse. Oh, let me explain a couple of things that you probably need to understand. When you think of the United States, we probably have more temperature stations here than anywhere. Temperature stations were initially built at airports because of the initial demand for those with air travel, with airplanes. And so airports are by far the most common place to put a weather station. Well, guess what happens around airports?
Jet blast.
Well, they become urbanized, and if you really want to know, if you want to ask me, anthropogenic global warming, is it real? It is real in an urban sense. Urban heat islands do exist. They're real. If you look at the weather averages for mineral wells and compare it with the weather averages for Dallas, you will find the high temperatures in the afternoon are the same, and the low temperatures in the morning are 5 degrees warmer in Dallas than they are here because of the urban heat island effect. So what they did statistically is, since the weather stations at airports have the longest history and go back the longest in time, they said, well, let's just make all of the data match what happens at the weather stations. So they apply the mathematical function to make all of the weather stations, even though they don't go back as far, they apply that function to it, so they all look that way. And that's the data that they give out to the universities for the master's students and whatever to study from. It's all been corrupted. And it all has the force fitting of the urban heat island effect. Now, let's think about that urban heat island effect for just a minute. The percentage of water on Earth is 72%, 78%?
Surface area.
Surface area. Yeah, it's 70, it's 75, it's not quite exactly. Okay, so most of it is water. Most of the surface of the Earth is water. Guess what? Humans don't have a whole lot of effect over that. Then there's also 14% of the surface area that is uninhabitable. Sahara Desert, Greenland.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, there's just...
Washington DC.
Yeah. There's another 14% that is uninhabitable. Then there's 10% that is agricultural, farming or whatever. We can have some effect over that. Basically, it's where we have an effect over that is if you change the color of the ground by the plants, you say, like you change from trees to grain, that changes what's called the albedo, which is the reflectivity of the Earth, which actually does affect global warming. If it reflects heat off, it's like a white versus black. You know, if something's black, it's going to absorb the heat. If it's white, it's going to absorb it. And then only 1% of the land area is urban. So 1% of total land area is urban. So what we're doing is we're taking that 1% and we're force-fitting all of the other data to match that 1%. Does that sound like a scientific reasonable principle? No, it doesn't. So, this is an interesting slide. This is out of NASA's own books in 1999. Look at the curve. This is temperature. Now look at it in 2019. See differences?
Go back for a second.
Go back. Okay, here you show almost no warming. There's some ups and there's some downs. Now all of a sudden, look at the end there. They changed the data. They did that. They applied that mathematical equation to the force fit to general curve to match the urban heat island effect. So here's showing basically what they did in another graph. So blue is where they've adjusted the temperature down, and red is where they've adjusted it up. So they're aligned on their data that they publish. It all has this in it. So now, obviously, one reason that they do that is because, guess what? There's lots of windmill makers and solar panel makers that are giving them money, and they're just funneling that back, so they're supported by that. But you can imagine, you just kind of follow the money. You know, perhaps there's some countries that also want to see us demise. Guess who's not worried about climate change? China. They still build coal plants every day. They make probably one a day. So.
And they build our windmills.
And they build our windmills, absolutely.
So,
here's a key point that I want you to understand clearly. When they talk about protecting the climate, and they just talk about getting rid of fossil fuels, and they don't talk about adding nuclear to the mix, you know that their motives are evil.
Yeah.
Because they would have, I mean, to be totally honest, I mean, there's been some nuclear accidents, but also our technology is way better than Chernobyl was, way better, you know. And even Fukushima, where the tidal wave wiped out that plant, it didn't kill anybody. It didn't, you know, really do that much harm. It just ruined the plant. So if you're not adding nuclear into the mix, at least for electricity, then you know that you're not really caring about the climate. You're just caring about money or something else. So,
We have 10 minutes for questions.
10 minutes for questions. Perfect. Fine.
What about, like, are there elevator radiation levels near nuclear facilities?
Nuclear is by far the least, every form of energy is going to have a cost. Every form of energy is going to have some risks to it, whether, like during the last, a couple weeks ago, there was a solar farm east of Houston that got wiped out by a hailstorm. Overnight, ruined pretty much the whole thing. So everything has a cost. Nuclear has the smallest cost in terms of lives and in terms of footprint. A footprint for a nuclear plant is measured in acres. Footprint for a solar plant is measured in hundreds of acres. For windmills, thousands of acres. So oil and gas is still by far the premium energy source for mobile stuff. I mean, for electricity, it would be nuclear, but for mobile transportation and a lot of other stuff, you need fossil fuels. Yes.
How would nuclear energy work with desalinization plants? I understand desalinization is a good way to go for getting more water, but it's very costly if you use fossil fuel.
Nuclear
So if
is
you did nuclear, could you?
absolutely the way to go for that.
That would be, I've often thought of transporting water throughout the United States. It could be a pipeline, aqueduct, and it sounds to me like.
Well, even Saudi Arabia's talked about harnessing an iceberg and towing it down.
But nuclear and desalinization would solve the problem.
Well, it would really help. I mean, I don't know the cost on that. That's not my bailiwick, but it would make sense.
Thank you. Very informative. Thank you very much.
What's the best thing we can say to somebody who's just feeding this to everyone? What's the best way to debunk it? To just say, no, that's not the science. This is the science.
If I knew that, I'd have some nephews and nieces that have different opinions. I'm not quite sure the best way, because everybody's different.
Where's the data?
That's why I'm doing this right now.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because my wife said, you need to quit complaining and start teaching people. Okay, so that's what we could do. You learn the subject, you know.
But how do you fight? The science is already there in the universities, so they have the truth now. So how do we show that this is the truth?
You have to recognize that you have an awful lot of data that's been literally manipulated.
Right. How do you get that word? How do you get people to understand that?
Watch some of Tony Heller. I think is there's some good people that put some really good podcasts out.
My response is always to ask them why they think Barack Obama bought a several $1 million home on the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
All right, some other questions.
First, I have a question at the end, but first of all, thank you for doing this. Because I know, when you're looking at your whole profession and you realize that not just a few people, but everybody got bamboozled from the top to the bottom, that just chills your blood. I mean, this is something you gave a big portion of your life to study.
Oh, I know.
And then, when you listen, and none of them are saying a word about it, it takes some kind of gumption to hold your hand up and say, this is nonsense. So I respect that a great deal, and I appreciate you doing it. My question is, once you saw that pattern of how easily an entire area of research could just be bought and they wipe out anything that didn't agree with them, did you start to notice that same pattern in any other industries?
Yes.
No kidding. Really?
It's like healthcare.
I'm shocked.
In fact, because I had noticed it here, and because this is something I've actually put in the 10,000 hours. I actually know. I actually feel confident that I
didn't even want to believe it, that you couldn't help it.
Okay, where else are they lying to me? And it became everywhere. Yes.
So I'm listening to your question. I love your question, and I've had this discussion and debate with other people. And the first thing I say to somebody is, it was first global warming, then it's climate change.
Yeah.
Now I've got changing in the language here. Number two, every single time an expert, I love that word, an expert has claimed that at this point in time, we're all going to die. Guess what?
We're not dead.
They're all wrong.
And most of them are dead.
So that's, by the way, that's scientific, okay? So that's number two. Number three is the fact that you, like you said earlier, just follow the money. Where's the money? Where's the money coming? Where's it going? And I have yet to meet a solar's great, okay?
That's
It's fine, it's fine,
That's
right?
used.
But I've yet to meet a solar company that is actually profitable at their own sales as opposed to funding from the government. End of story.
Okay, I have one comment, and then I'm going to ask the blonde lady back. First of all, in answer to your question, the slide that I showed you of CO2 on the dramatic drop with just a little tiny bit of an uptick at the bottom, we are actually saving the planet by producing oil and gas. It's actually in a net benefit, and if you're not in, okay, I'll go ahead and use the word degrowth. If you're going to see that in some of the publications, and some people talk about how important degrowth is. Basically what they're saying is we want to kill a lot of people and or keep a lot of people from being born, and because we think that the earth is going to be better with 1 billion people on it instead of 8 billion. And that's really what they're saying. And so if you show the slide of CO2 is an important gas, and taking that out of the atmosphere is a crime, and putting it in is not a crime, that's where you kind of have to start.
That's right.
Okay, yes.
I think in elementary science that we learned that when we breathe out CO2, the trees take it in, they need it, and then they give us oxygen. That means we live. So if we get rid of all the, you know, if we tax people like this, we get money, we get punished for breathing out the CO2.
Okay, so here's a question for you. What does carbon credits do to save the environment? That's what I thought too. It doesn't do anything. So carbon credits has no value for the science, and yet that's the primary thing that they're driving with this science, is they want climate credits, carbon credits. They can buy and trade. It has nothing to do with protecting the climate or the planet or the environment. It has everything to do with giving them a mechanism to take your money. Okay.
The meteorologist Bryan Sleeman, have you read any of his books? How would you, I read one a long time ago.
I am not familiar with him. I'll have to look him up.
Okay. Do you have a book that covers what you're talking about here, that a layman could read and say something about?
Well, it's interesting that one of the founders of Greenpeace is actually, coming out saying, wait a minute, you guys are crazy. The founder of the Weather Channel was in the same group. So the very first people that started talking out about, hey, wait, this is the wrong road, were retired NASA scientists. Because they didn't have, they'd already retired. They didn't have to worry about their paycheck. And they're going, wait, this is crazy, this is dumb. So it's the emeritus professors at Princeton and elsewhere that are still writing some of these things, that are getting this information out. So there's been a tremendous amount of censorship going on, and you have to look for sometimes people that are retired and what?
Your experiment.
Oh, my experiment. Do I have a volunteer?
No, Joey, you do it.
Joey.
All right.
We've seen enough of mine.
All right. I want you to have a sip with this one and a sip of that one, and maybe back and forth and tell the difference.
This one's colder.
That was good. Is there more? Is there more fizz? Maybe don't have long enough, but or this one.
The colder one.
It has more fizz?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what we're learning with that is, guess what? CO2 evaporates what from a warmer can of,
Comes out of hot water.
comes out of hot water, comes out of the ocean. So that goes back to that one graph I showed, that the CO2 increases are occurring as much from the ocean heating up as from anything else. And in fact, only 4% of the CO2 in the air is from human emissions, the rest is natural.
Wow.
So we are really barking up the wrong tree.
And you better do something about them cows, I'm telling you right now.
Here's your story on the cows and the methane. You know, they're saying that cow flatulence gets methane into the atmosphere and it's a horrible greenhouse gas and we're all going to die because of cows farting. Well, who's the most independent person that you know of? A rancher that has a cow that can feed himself and has some land to grow food on. And so, if you can make carbon credits go to cows, what a great idea.
Thank you so much. Scared the dog. Okay, so our next meeting is going to be May 20th. And it's going to be in the county. It's going to be out at Mel's Diner in Mingus. We had a candidate Q&A out there recently, before the Mike Olcott election. And we do not know who the speaker is yet. We have a couple on hold. So I will be sending out, if you do not have our email, please, or we have your email, would you please sign up back there and you'll hear all about it. And am I forgetting anything? I think that's it. You all get to go home, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, all right. We have people on YouTube.
Yes, sir. But it'll probably be tomorrow.
Okay.
Get it up there.
All right, that'll be fine, sir. Thank you for doing it.
Thanks.